Howdy everybody! Did you know that the apple first originated in Central Asia in the region now known as the country of Kazakhstan? From there, it spread all over the world, and there are now about 7,500 varieties of the common apple known as Malus domestica. The original variety from Kazakhstan still exists. It's called Malus
Siversii.
and it's much smaller, even smaller than this tiny guy here. And it has kind of a bland, sub-acid flavor. You probably have heard that the apples of today are not as nutritious as the ones that your grandparents or great-grandparents ate. But is this really true? You might be thinking, this is fake news. After all, look at the beautiful display in the photo that I'm showing here of fruit and vegetables that are all uniform and all the same size and look really delicious. Of course you would say that the fruit and vegetables are better today than they were back then. Well, you'd be both wrong and right. Wrong in the sense that the apples of today really are not as nutritious as they were back during your grandparents' time. But they actually do look a lot better, and they last a lot longer. And in the process of selecting for those traits that make them have a longer shelf life, have a more uniform shape, pest resistance, all of those things, the process of selecting for those has actually resulted in a reduction in the nutrition of the apple and a lot of other vegetables and fruits. In fact, a study conducted by the United States Department of Agriculture looking at from 1950 to 1999 found that there was a gradual decrease in the nutritional value of 43 vegetables and fruits across that time. And the average decline was 38%. Now, of course, there's been 23 years since the end of that study in 1999, and if we assume that the decline has continued at the same rate, and this apple here is only about 46% as nutritious as the same apple that your grandparents or great-grandparents ate. That's astounding. So why has this happened? Well, a lot of it has been driven by consumer preferences. In other words, consumers want to be able to eat fruit and vegetables that are not necessarily even available in their area, or at least not seasonally available in their area. They want to be able to eat those all year round. And that means that those fruits and vegetables have to be grown somewhere else and shipped to that location. The shipping, unfortunately, results in a lot of damage and spoilage. And so growers selected for traits that would allow the fruits and vegetables to survive the transportation challenges. So yes, now we have fruits and vegetables that can be transported around the world and not really show any ill effects. But the actual ill effect is that they're less nutritious. Consumers also want to be able to buy perfect looking fruit. They don't want to buy fruit that has been eaten partially by an insect or is malformed. It's not the nice round look of an apple like this one here. This is nice and round and uniform in shape, but in nature, you don't get that often. But consumers want that, and they want big fruit. This is a small fruit here, but it turns out that it's pretty sweet. Well, what if another grower had an apple that was big, but it actually didn't taste very good? Well, you'd cross those two together and hope that you wind up with at least one tree that would produce apples that are both big and sweet. But in the process, you've paid a price. The apple is less nutritious. So consumer preference has a lot to do with why the fruit and vegetables are less nutritious now than they were back during your grandparents' time. Consumer demand also has a huge effect. If consumer demand is high, then producers seek, through techniques such as plant hybridization and genetic engineering to produce varieties that have very high yields. But again, this has resulted in an overall loss of nutrition. Nature has a rule that you can't get something for nothing. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, consider the trees around me here. They're what is known in biology as a closed system. Well, what does that mean? It means that they have a limited potential. If they get great nutrition and plenty of water, they have potential to perhaps grow taller than this tree here, but that potential is still within a pretty fine, narrow range. And so all plants and trees adapt over time to reach a state of metabolic equilibrium. That's called homeostasis with the environment around them. So all of the trees that are surrounding me here have adapted to this environment. Change the environment, and they have some ability called resistance to be able to adapt within that state of homeostasis without disrupting it, even though there's been changes. But doing something drastic like plant hybridization, you've created a new variety of that plant. Through genetic engineering, you've created a new variety of that plant. So the homeostasis, the metabolic equilibrium, has been completely disrupted, and the plant has to try to adapt again to the environment around it as best it can. And it can't maintain the original state of homeostasis, and so it sets a new one, a new point. But in the process of making that adaptation, the plant or tree only has the material that it's made of to work with. That's what it means by being a closed system. In other words, it can't bring in something from the outside. No, it has to adapt with the potential that it has. And so something has to be taken from another part of that plant in order for this other thing, like a bigger fruit, a sweeter fruit that won't spoil, it has to take from something else. One of the things that plants and trees seem to be doing is reducing the amount of nutrition that is in the fruit. Because remember, the purpose of fruit for the plant is not for us to get nutrition from it. The purpose of the fruit is to disperse the seeds of the plant. So as long as the fruit is still palatable and still attractive to animals, they don't care if the nutrition is lower. Now, this is a complicated subject, and I'm trying my best not to go into any big specifics about it, but at least give you an idea of why this is happening. A lot of it is consumer driven. Now, the other part of it is the overall quality of soil that is providing nutrients to the plant itself. It turns out that the overall quality of the soil has been decreasing year after year after year after year, unless if you happen to be a regenerative rancher or farmer or a permaculturist, you're doing things to make sure that the soil maintains its nutrients. Then the quality of the soil through things like tillage, planting huge monocultures, the use of herbicides and pesticides and chemical fertilizer, all of these industrial farming techniques have reduced the quality of the soil. They've increased soil compaction, and that has reduced the amount of soil organic matter in the soil, which in turn has reduced the amount of microorganisms that can survive in the soil. The microorganisms are what actually give the nutrition to the plants. In most cases, minerals and other aspects of nutrition in the soil are in chemical forms that are unavailable to the plant to use. And it's the microorganisms and fungi that convert those minerals and other nutrients into forms that the plants can take up in their roots and actually use. But if you don't have the microorganisms, you could have all kinds of nutrients in the soil, all kinds of minerals in the soil, and nothing's going to happen because those minerals and nutrients are not in a chemical form that the plant can use. So through our processes of industrial agriculture, we have drastically reduced the quality of soil. So with that, I'm going to try to enjoy my minimally nutritious apple. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.